My name's Janie Hayes. I'm coming to you from Salida, Colorado. Welcome to the OhioRAAM Show.
Well, thank you, Janie Hayes, for that introduction. Janie was in the 12-hour World Time Trial races some weeks ago at Borrego Springs, and she came in second in the women's division, and you'll see Jamie on a future show here in March. Thanks, Jamie. And my name is Lee Kreider. I am the producer of the OhioRAAM Show. It is not snowing in Ohio, unlike the background here display shows. In fact, our local ski area just closed down operations altogether because of warm weather and rain. And the owner of Brewski Media is sitting down here watching over, making sure that I do everything right. Would you like a treat, Brewski? Okay. He'll let me know if things aren't going right.
I am Maria Vasquez. I am the host of the OhioRAAM Show, a show about cycling and ultracycling. This is a service of the Race Across America time stations 41 in Oxford, 42 in Blanchester, and 43 in Chillicothe.
And the OhioRAAM Show comes to you on the 7th, 17th, and 27th of each month, and this is show number 207. Be sure to check the show notes. You'll see them right below the video if you're watching the show on OhioRAAMshow.com website. If you're watching them on YouTube, you'll see a link to the show notes in the description box below the video. You'll find information on today's guests, other information of import, as well as the ways you can follow the OhioRAAM Show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Well, in today's show, we're going to have Andrew Willis. I've been trying to get Andrew on the show for a while, so let's get right on with today's show with Andrew Willis down in Austin, Texas, and who knows where Maria is at. Hey, Maria, where in the heck are you?
Hi, Lee. I am in Utica, New York, working myself to get to Boston.
And you're sitting there in your car with your phone, and actually, it looks like pretty good, and this is a good illustration of what we try to do sometimes on the Race Across America, where we have people on the road talk to us about what's happening. So it can be done.
Exactly. So here I am trying it out. I might drive to this spot like multiple times to record the show because apparently you like the picture better. So
no, it's just working very well. Okay, Maria, go ahead.
All right. Welcome to today's show. Hello, Lee. How are you doing today?
I am well, and drive safely up there. Snowy, I see.
Yes, thank you. Hi, Andrew. How are you doing today? Welcome to the show.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
I have so many things I would love to talk to you about, but I have to start with asking you, share a little bit about your childhood and how you made it into cycling, which is, I believe it's a very, very interesting story.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I grew up in a small town south of San Antonio called Lytle, Texas. I was pretty overweight as a kid and just kind of turned off with the whole school sports thing. Really tried to avoid anything where I'd have to change clothes in the locker room with other kids or anything. Just really embarrassed about my image and all. In 1989, I got a copy of Boys Life magazine because I was in the Boy Scouts. It had a feature about Greg LeMond, who had just won the Tour de France. And I decided right then, like, I'm going to be a bike racer. And I remember distinctly, I walked outside to our barn, got our lawnmower and our gas can, and I started walking around town, knocking on doors, asking if I could mow lawns. And I started saving money in a shoebox under my bed for, well, almost a year until I got my bike. And I would hang out at the shops and talk to the people there. And I'm sure, now I can look back on it and I'm sure I was that annoying kid who came in questions. But near the end of that summer, so almost a year after I had first seen that Boys Life article on Greg LeMond, I walked in with the final amount of money, and I went racing out into the countryside. I mean, it didn't take long to get out in the middle of nowhere in Lytle, and got about 6 or 7 miles outside of town, and dropped my chain, and it got tangled up. I decided right then I hated cycling. When my Uncle Bob, who was my mom's brother, who was going to Rice University at the time, called me and said him and his college buddies were going to do the MS 150. And as it turned out, like, they said go, and I took off, and I never saw my uncle and his friends again. And I thought it was the most amazing thing, and I was hooked on cycling. And we went in summer that year, and of course I was still an overweight kid, and I just spent that entire summer going into school, just riding my bike. And I mean, all over the hill country, boat shoes, unpadded shorts. At some point I did get some real shorts and a wool jersey, and I would just load up with sweets or whatever I could get from my house, put them in my pockets. Always had a few dollars for a soda, and I would take off riding all over, and I'd swim rivers, and I'd take naps under trees. And like, sometimes I think back to that summer and I'm like, man, that was cycling. Like, that was the best. You know, I got into the racing side of it.
Now it's one of the most interesting parts. You made it to Cat 1 at what age?
18.
Okay.
Yeah. And I won my first Pro 1-2-3 men's race at 16. So a lot of times if I did the junior race, I'd be hanging out all day at the race anyway. So it made more sense just to keep racing as many races as I could. And at the time I was very intent on trying to go professional.
And I believe that was the time you then moved to Europe. How does it compare from your perspective?
Yeah, so I moved to Europe for a few months to race in my early 20s. I first went to UT Austin for school, but through going to UT and doing some work in the kinesiology lab, I made a contact who plugged me in with a team over in the Netherlands. And I went there for a summer, and I raced. And at first I was getting my butt kicked. I mean, just left and right. The races were longer. In some ways, they weren't as fast as the races here, but the races here were shorter. But the races there were harder because they were longer, and they had a different rhythm to them. The roads are different. It was like I was having to learn how to race all over again. And then when I came back to the U.S., I had a string of really strong national level race results.
Tell me a little bit about your beginnings in ultracycling, because I know you got into it and you liked it. Can you talk to us a little bit about it?
Kind of fell in and out of love with cycling several times, gained some weight, and I'd started this event promotion business, and had just been putting all my time into that. And eventually, in 2012, I started riding again. In 2013, I met Dex Took, who is an ultracycling luminary and runs the No Country for Old Men race. And he'd come up to watch a race that we put on called the Tour of Austin that year. And he was like, "Hey, Andrew, I hear you're riding again. I think you'd really enjoy No Country for Old Men." And of course, I took off from the start like a road racer, and I just went charging down the road full bore. And then I started coming back, and that's when I started feeling it. But I managed it, and I got through it at the end, and I just had this like sense of achievement and fulfillment from a cycling event that I'd never felt in road racing or criterium racing. And all I knew was that I wanted more of that. You know, I only knew 2 speeds, all out, full throttle, or crawling along. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll sign up for RAAM. This is where my lack of experience
kicked in,
caught up with me at an ultra race. Drew and I got disconnected somehow, and I ended up riding by myself for an hour. They couldn't find me. We dropped down into Borrego. I was already covered in salt. By the time we got there, I needed to go to the hospital. And so like 130, 140 miles into it. Being naive and not really understanding ultracycling, I decided that the best course of action was to redeem myself at Race Across Oregon a few weeks later. So this time I made sure I drank plenty at Oregon, and Oregon was hot, really hot and all. And I drank so much water that I ended up flushing all the salts out of my system and ended up back in the hospital for the opposite reason, because I had no electrolytes left in my system. And I spent a day or two in the hospital getting fixed up there. I would learn and I would adjust. And so I recovered from Oregon and started training for the Tejas 500 that September. I needed to change my mindset from going all out, my power and my heart rate range that my coach had set for me. And we had come up with this every lap. I was going to stop for a minute or two, which blew me away, like the idea of stopping. My coach had told my crew that was there not to give me any updates on how I was doing in the race until the waypoint. And so I get to the 250-mile mark and I come around and finally I get my first update and they're like, "You're in second place." And I'm like, "Okay, well, how far up is first?" And they're like, "He's about to lap you." And I remember being like, I can't believe, like, how is that possible? Like, I was going along pretty good. And this was actually a really big learning moment for me with ultracycling, because my crew could see that I was about to go after him, right? And like put the hammer down, and they're like, "Don't you dare. You have 250 miles. Remember, the goal is to stay in your numbers and to finish and have a good experience." And so I stayed in my numbers. And what ended up happening was Julian ended up fading. And about 150 miles later, all of a sudden I catch up to him and pass him and end up winning the race. And it really opened my eyes up to an ultra. Sometimes less is more. You got to play the long game, and that patience is the biggest virtue.
Right, Andrew. So talk to us a little bit about the races that you host.
Yeah, so I have this event company called Holland Racing, which is the combination of my wife Holly and I's names. I wanted to put on my own ultra race and in the Austin area, and so we created this event called the Pace Bend Ultra. First year was 2017 in February. It's the week before Sebring, and it's a 10-kilometer loop, 6.2 miles. We're going to do it again in 2019. And so since the 24, 12, and the 6, and we have a 3-hour option. And then in 2015, when I first did the Tejas 500, I remember saying to one of my guys on my crew, Kenny, and there was just this environment there that I wanted to try to capture. And I said to Kenny, "Man, I'd love to own this event someday." And I came back and I did the race again the next year. A couple months after the race in 2016, my phone rings one day. And so in 2017, we put on the race. This year we had close to 150 people at the Texas Time Trials. And I'm just really happy that we were able to kind of carry the torch for that event. And I plan on doing it as long as I can, and then find the next person to pass it off to.
In the show notes, you'll see a link that will give you links to the races that Andrew was talking about, and we would invite you to go there and learn more about them.
Thank you, Andrew, for joining us today. Thank you, Lee, as usual, for having me in the show. And for those of you who are watching, we will see you in about 10 days.
And thank you very much, both of you. And Maria, drive safe. Thank you, Andrew, for being with us. You're making a significant contribution to the ultracycling world, and we appreciate what you do. Thank you, Maria, for hosting once again, and we hope you travel safe. And we want to thank you to the audience. It's the first show of 2019, and we know that a lot of you are looking forward to a great race season, and we hope to present you with a lot of interesting guests in this coming year. On our next show, we're going back to India once again, and we're going to be chatting with Bharat Panu, who will be racing in the Race Across America in 2019. So, goodbye, Maria.
Goodbye, Lee. Goodbye, everyone. See you in about 10 days.
Music by Kevin McLeod.